Wherever you are, it's time to activate the senses as we bring you the words as they come across the world, as we bring you the Nifty Travel Podcast.
They painted not just the animals, because they painted also the life of a medicine man, the life of a shaman, the life of a traditional healers, how he used to heal the people, what he used to do, those trance dance, the dance that help him and allow him to speak and communicate with the ancestors. Because it's in a belief that our ancestors, some of us, we believe that our ancestors are still alive. They are around us. And for the Bushmen or the Sun, when they needed to communicate, they had to use the trance mode. As they used the trance mode, at the end of the day, there were healings, they were helping, and they could actually make things become alive when they wanted to. So some of these paintings, they represent those kind of way of life. When you go on hunting, what you hunt, you bring back home. That is the story that was told. They will say Alex went on hunting and he brought a rhino horn with him.
You might not be able to see and do everything you want to be doing, but more trying to stay present and enjoy the moment of being with your loved ones, and also hopefully checking off a few things you want to do. But finding the balance in that, I think, is super important when you're traveling with a group. And like I said, diversifying what you're doing. You don't want to spend all day at the zoo for the 4-year-old, and you can definitely do that in the morning, and then maybe do a brewery in the afternoon, so that they still enjoy some outdoor time, but also the parents have a moment. And I'm big on, I just said to try to go with the flow a bit, but I'm also big on prep, where an emotional prep. I sit my kids down. I mean, the 2-year-old's small, but I try to say, hey, listen, we're going to be doing something really exciting in the morning, and this is what to expect. And then we're going to go do this other thing. It might be a little less fun, but we're all going to be together and we're going to make a good day of it. I try to have these conversations with them, and I think it helps, because surprises are great, but surprises are tough for little kids or in a big group. So I think it's better to manage expectations ahead of time, if that makes sense.
Yes, there are many other community tourism opportunities in Ecuador that are designed by the communities, that are run by the communities, and are not travel agency led. And this is what I mean. Sometimes a travel agency goes into a community and says, this is what we want you to do. Instead of going into a community and saying, we want to have a conversation with you. We'd like to know what tourism looks like for your community. How do you want to invite tourists in? What level of entrance do you want them to have? Are they allowed to participate in rituals? Are they allowed to go visit the sacred waterfall? Are they allowed to? These are conversations that have to take place before any tourist shows up on the ground. And when communities have done this together and done this work, the tourism opportunities are much better and more vibrant.
Now, I can't not ask you about birds. I asked somebody else recently, do you have to be patient? Birds? And they gave me a rather strange answer.
Well, I can tell you, my wife would say I am not a patient person, and she's correct. I can be patient for short periods. An old, now long dead birder called Desmond Nethercell Thompson used to say there's two kinds of birders, arsers and leggers. And leggers run around an area and sort of try to visit as many different habitats as possible, or places or hides or whatever. And they see quite a lot of birds. And arsers sit in one place or stand in one place, and they see fewer birds, but they see them much better. And they see things like kingfishers, because they just stand and wait. And if you wait for long enough on a wetland habitat, a kingfisher will come past. And you might miss it if you're walking or talking, as I often do. So yeah, I'm not a terribly patient person. People used to say to me as a wildlife filmmaker, "Oh, I suppose you must spend weeks on end." They've watched these documentaries, you know, where they show them sitting for weeks on end trying to film a snow leopard or something, you know. And it's like, I could never do that, not in a million years, you know. And that's why I worked with Bill Oddie and worked on live programs and fast turnaround programs. Because my temperament does not suit that. I admire the people who do, particularly the camera people who will sit often quite uncomfortably and quite on their own in a hide or, you know, up a tree or something for literally days and weeks on end.
And I always advise our guests to always get into third class reserved seats. Obviously, you have the first class, you have the second class, but I advise my guests to get into third class reserved seats. So you avoid the crowd, you have your reserved seat, but at the same time, you also get to experience how others, the locals, travel, you know. I think personally speaking, and we always sort of advise, you know, just aim for the third class reserved seat as the best experience, because you might not have the aircon, but you don't need the aircon. It's more than that. It's about getting that real experience, you know, and learning a thing or two. And a lot of interesting things happens based on the crowd.
Wander very far, you know. They were perhaps, you say some of them were farmers, and perhaps they weren't great travelers. So they were, perhaps they were interested in you as you were about them.
Yeah, I stayed with some people who had never gone to the nearest bigger village, which was 10 kilometers away. And that to me was, you know, as someone who has always moved from place to place and who has, you know, always had people from other countries over, that was exotic for me to hear that someone had never been 10 kilometers away from home. And also, and there was this one family, you know, when people say, well, the internet is very democratic and it reaches everyone, and there were families that I stayed with who didn't have internet and had never had that, because also, especially in Argentina, there's just the internet doesn't reach all places, you know. So there are places where you cycle for a week maybe, and you don't, or at least days, where you just don't have any signal.
Yeah,
it just doesn't. Yeah, so that, yeah, I mean, they were very interested as well in who am I, but it seemed like I'm an alien, and it was, you know, I can't even start to explain that I'm from Finland or that I'm from Europe, because it just doesn't, you know, there was no connecting ground for them for where I'm from. So it was more of a, you know, just an interpersonal exchange between people, and not really telling about my country or what I'm doing. And often it was easier also if I said, okay, I've been cycling, I don't know, if I was in, you know, Brazil, and I said I'd been cycling from Argentina, it just, you know, some people didn't really grasp the distance, you know. But if I said I'd cycled from the next big village here, it was like, wow, really, you've done 30 kilometers by bicycle. So you know, it was very, very interesting too. It was very eye-opening for me as well.
So there you have it. Please do like and subscribe now to see the full recordings now. Enjoy.